Because quite often, mashallah, I was fortunate to experience life with many different people, many different cultures, even of course our own culture. So does that mean that we impart upon them, instill upon them 100% the exact culture we have? Okay, culturally we do this. And that is the criterion? Is that the wisdom and the hikmah that we impart upon our next generation they can take with them? No. The hikmah, the wisdom, and that adab that we should impart upon them should be within the parameters of Islam, that we impart upon them Islam. And when we give them our adab, we give them our experience, we explain to them our experience, be very honest with them that, you know what, when I read this dua, or I did this and I was in obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this helped me. And I saw the barakah. But at any moment I saw myself not being in full obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then yes, the barakah left. So it's not about following a particular cultural norm. Yes, culture is fine. But what trumps culture is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed. And that example that is put before us by Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdalu salatu wassalam. And we instill in them that wisdom that, look, if you follow that guidelines, no matter what, even if some people may be displeased culturally, but if you follow that guideline, the barakah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will remain in them. And we ourselves, and inshallah, I believe so, and hopefully so, we probably wouldn't be sitting here or constantly coming to the masjid if we haven't experienced that barakah. If we haven't experienced the barakah of Ramadan, for example, or the barakah of this blessed month of Sha'ban, or the barakah of going to Hajj, or the barakah of making dua, the barakah of making salah. But also we've perhaps experienced the negative effects of some of them. And if we took it easy, oh, well, I'm not going to make salat on time. Oh, we're relaxing. We also see the effects. This is the hikmah that we impart upon our children. Why? Because the goal that we want them to achieve at the end of this tarbiyah, and that tarbiyah, and that latter stage, it will end with what? It will end with our parting from this world and going to the next. Our own parting for ourselves, that tarbiyah, that last stage, and their parting from this world. And we want them to gain the best blessing, and that is to enter into paradise. That is the wisdom that we want to give them. That is the adab that we want to give them. That adab that takes them to that goal, to that objective. This is what we also find in the words of Luqman al-Hakim, where he was giving and imparting that wisdom upon his son. And particularly with regards to this idea and concept of muraqabat al-nafs, to be careful of yourself. First, we mentioned how Luqman, he imparted upon his son knowledge, the value of knowledge and wisdom of the intellect. But it does no good if one simply learns that or they acquire that knowledge, but it does not affect their lives, nor are they aware or protecting that knowledge, or even assessing that knowledge. Because that's what muraqabat al-nafs is to hold oneself accountable. That, oh, well, I was taught this, I learned this. Did I implement it in my life? Did I implement it? So in this regards, Luqman, we'll go through this very quickly, but with regards to this muraqabat al-nafs, he imparts wisdom upon his son, and there's 4 things that he tells his son. In one place, Luqman, he tells his son, لِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ مَطِيَّةٌ وَمَطِيَّةُ الْعَقْلِ التَّوَاضُعُ. He says that everything, and everything has its price. Everything has its price. Everything has its toll. And the price of intellect, in order to really sharpen your intellect, because Luqman, he told us what is the value of wisdom, what is the value of the intellect. He says the price of that is tawadu, is humbleness. But if you truly want to learn, gain knowledge, and knowledge, when Ahlul speak about it, and someone like Luqman Hakim speak about it, it's not something that you just read in a book and it stays in the book and then, oh, I have to go back and see. Knowledge is that thing which becomes a part of you. This is what our was. Knowledge becomes that which is a part of you. For example, we truly have knowledge of salat, our everyday salat. We make our takbir. We don't have to go and read the rules of it. Say, oh, well, how it is. But do we have knowledge of Hajj? No. Because we don't do it every day, nor have we embodied that knowledge to the point it becomes a part of us, whereby, oh, if I pick up right now and I go to Mecca and I begin my Hajj, this is type of thing. If I begin my Hajj, I don't have to review anything because I know exactly what I should be doing. That knowledge is a part of it. And so this is why Luqman, he says that if you want to embody that knowledge in that manner, that it becomes a part of you need to wallow. You need to be humble. The second thing that Luqman, he tells his son with regards to and taking account of himself. So there he will take account of what do I really know about my deed? What do I really know about Allah? About what I'm practicing, about what I'm doing. If I'm humble, I'll learn it, it will stay with me, and will be part of it. Second, Luqman, he tells him, he says, Ya bunay, man yurid ridwan Allah, yuskhit nafsahu kathira. About gaining Allah's pleasure. He says, if you want to gain Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's pleasure, he says, then displease your nafs a lot, often. So the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is displeasing the nafs, displeasing the self. And this is not just simply any nafs said, oh, well, I want to make myself upset. No, that nafs, that hawa, that takes you towards the disobedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you think that there's some sort of pleasure in it, but by engaging in that, you're displeasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Luqman, he tells his son, he says, that nafs, make sure it's unhappy. Make sure you don't go towards those things which your nafs are pulling you towards. And by doing this, by upsetting your low desires, that nafsul amara bisu, that low desire, by upsetting that, you will please Allah. Because whosoever does not do this, they will never please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he says, in conjunction with this, وَمَنْ لَا يَكْهَدٍ عَيْدَهُ يُشْمِتَ عَدُوَّهُ. A similar statement. He says, and that person who does not hold back his or her anger, and what they actually do, they put themselves in a position that their enemy will rejoice. Why is this? Because now your enemy would have an excuse to do whatever he or she wants to do. So, oh, you see this person? Look at their, they said this, they did this. So now, whatever they do against you, they will justify. Not only with themselves, but with others. So, oh, why are you treating this person like this? You don't know this is what he did to me, that's what he did. So we must be careful of this nafs of the Allah, this nafs which takes us away from the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And again, it's emphasized when Luqman, he tells his son, he says, Ya bunay, inha nafsa an hawaha. So prevent your nafs from fulfilling its desires, fulfilling those whims. Do not allow yourself to do this. And one of this ayah that I begin with, if we read this and we contemplate this ayah, this is ayah, 2 verses, 40 and 41 of Surah Al-Nazi'at, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, وَأَمَّا مَنْ خَافَ مَقَامَ رَبِّهِ وَنَهَى النَّفْسَ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ فَإِنَّ الْجَنَّةَ هِيَ الْمَأْوَىٰ. That if we are truly doing this muraqabah, we're taking account of ourselves, then that will take us towards paradise. If we're taking account as to truly what have we learned from the Quran, what have we learned from the Sunnah and the Seerah of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
As I said, it's different from what we've simply heard and not implemented. But that which we've implemented and has become part, that when we do so and we prevent ourselves, our low selves from its desires, then the end game is paradise. In the Jannah. Because that will instill within us, and this is a beautiful point that one of our facilities made about this verse. He says, because that will instill within us this sense of, as we say, fear. He says, we don't fear Allah. This is because the essence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there's no fear in it. And this verse explains that. Where's the khawf from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? It's in the maqam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَأَمَّا مَنْ خَافَ مَقَامَ رَبِّهِ. And what is that maqam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What is that status and state of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we should be fearful of? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is what? Ahkam al-hakim. He is the best and the greatest of judges. He will judge our actions. He will be the one that we stand before on Yawm al-Qiyamah, and all of our actions will be laid before us. There's no khawf in the essence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. لا خوف في ذات الله لكن خوف في مقامه. But fear of that station. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as the greatest of judges, he can judge by justice, by his adl. And if he judges any of his creation by his adl, then bear that. SubhanAllah, even if when we look at the du'as of the ma'sumeen, they never ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to judge me by your justice. He said, oh Allah, judge me by your mercy. But in order to have that dua, that simple dua, oh Allah, judge me by your mercy and not your justice, then you must have this muraqabah. You must be in that position that, oh Allah, that if no dua is answered, if none of our duas are answered, this is the one dua we want to answer. But oh Allah, judge me by your mercy and not by your justice. But we need to do nafs, take account of ourselves so that that one dua at least can be answered. The last thing that Luqman imparted on his son, he says, oh my son, ya bunay, inna kulla yawman ya'tika yawmun jadid yashhadu alayka anna rabbin. He says, oh my son, remember that every day is a new day. And perhaps that day will testify against you before your Lord. So meaning that each and every day we should be taking account of ourselves. We should be doing well. not once a week, at least once a day. Assess ourselves at the end of the day. Have I walked in the footsteps of the Quran, the light of the guidance of the Quran, that of Muhammad wa al Muhammad? And if we do this, then inshallah, we will be perfecting our own tarbiyah. And if we impart this on our children, the next generation, then their tarbiyah also will be complete. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the strength to truly take account of ourselves before we are taking account of. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to answer this dua of ours, to judge us by His mercy and not by His justice. وآخر دعوانا والحمد لله رب العالمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل اللهم صل محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين. ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين الرسول المصدق المصطفى الأمجد أبي القاسم محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
وعلى أوصيائه وأولياء الله أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب والحسن بن علي والحسين بن علي وعلي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والحجة بن الحسن وقائد بن منذر المهدي.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
حجم الله تعالى فرجه. أما بعد، قد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله. صدق الله العلي العظيم.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
First and foremost, I advise myself for taqwallah, and I advise each of you for taqwallah, consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in every action. As we mentioned, the idea and concept of taqwallah, of being conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is understanding our duty and responsibility before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and also with regards to the Imam of our time. We mentioned that this blessed month, alhamdulillah, in this blessed month, we had a number of our Imams who were born, particularly Imam Mahdi Ajal
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Imam of our time, the Imam who we are answerable to, the Imam who we are in waiting of his reappearance, and that awaiting the Imam, it is coupled with God consciousness. It is coupled with taqwallah. And that waiting for the Imam means that we also have to do our part with regards to preparing the grounds for the Imam. To be those pillars of justice, those symbols of justice, those symbols that speak out against injustice and speak for the oppressed, to support their cause. So that means we also must understand as well in our time, what are those things that we can do? What are those causes which we can support in the way of justice? One of those causes also rehashed itself, or if we haven't been following, or we've forgotten about. That's the nature of it. We hear something and we say, oh yes, this shouldn't happen in this way. But then after months, we forget about it. In order to do our responsibility, then we have to support these things. Or even if we choose one. Last week we mentioned about the inequality with regards to the farmers. Choose one and stand there, see it to fruition. Yesterday, there was also, as I said, one of these causes that rehashed itself for those who perhaps lost track of it. And that is the activism or the injustice or inequality that took place with regards to Native American lands in Dakota, the pipeline that was built that's jeopardizing the water system that they have. And so yesterday, although April 1st, but this was not a prank, it's not an April Fool's thing, the Native Americans, they went to Washington, they stood outside the White House, led by one of their activists who has taken the name or who has been given this name, killed Black Snake, and Black Snake is the white black. This is what to advocate for their rights, for at least the clean water that, and requesting that alternative things can be done to get energy instead of pulling oil, instead of doing what they're doing that will contaminate their water system, their water supply. This is one of the causes. Of course, every year we, especially in the blessed month of Ramadan, who's coming up, we think about the Palestinians, which we should do. They are our brothers in Islam. But even the Native Americans, while they may not be Muslim, they are our brothers in creation. And we have a duty and responsibility to walk in the path of Rasulullah, walk in the path of to speak up for these inequalities that are happening. When we think about this order now, just in here, that why we should as well. From the perspective of the Quran, we see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He swears by nature. Washamsi wa duha. He swears by nature. Wal ardi wa ma taha. Allah swears by this nature. It is something that we should be conscious of, that we should not be disconnected from what is happening. And we can be effective. I'll give you one example for something that even people may not have also lost track of. For years, the water crisis that was existing in Flint, Michigan, that people did not have proper water to drink. Their water was contaminated. Created all kinds of health effects, birth effects for people. But when people stood up, they said, no, something has to be done. Alhamdulillah, after, as the news states, after $400 million of government spending, bringing filters to the people, their homes, making sure that they have good water. Now they have at least drinkable water. The same thing here with the Native Americans that is happening. We should not overlook these cases. We should not think that, oh, well, it has nothing to do with us. No, it has everything to do with us. As Muslims, as those who say that we walk in the footsteps of Rasulullah and obey to it, as those who say that we read the Quran, that nature should not be destroyed. Now, in here, but just to mention this, and something that I came across some months back, of one of our scholars even writing about the haqq, the rights of the earth upon us. The earth has a right upon us. We've been entrusted with her. We've been entrusted to protect this ni'mah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. And here's a clear example where we can do our part to fulfill our right to this blessing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, to stand up for those who are oppressed, and to give them the basic essential that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created all life from and not from word. I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increases us in taqwa and our God consciousness and our duty to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first and foremost, and our duty to the Imam of our time. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He makes us among the helpers and companions of our Imam. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive our sins, cover our shortcomings. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us our needs. I ask Him to cure those who are sick among our friends and family members, and to have mercy upon our deceased ones.
إلهي.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم اغفر ذنوبنا واستر عيوبنا واقضي حوائجنا واشف مرضانا وارحم امواتنا وعجل فرج مولانا صاحب العصر والزمان واجعلنا معنا من سالك والمستشفين وتحت الماء بحق محمد واله الطاهرين. اللهم صل على
محمد وآله.
آخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر.
اللهم صل على محمد.
اللهم صل